Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna tackle this huge orchid, which you cannot really see. It's extending off camera, but I'm gonna show you some footage. So we're gonna try to repot it because it is currently potted in a basket or pot of sorts without any type of medium. You're gonna see. Not only do I want to go through the repotting process and see how to go about such a big specimen orchid, but also talk a little bit about when is the proper time to repot deciduous dendrobiums, the types of dendrobiums that have a very specific growth pattern, growing vegetatively in the summer, then losing all of their leaves in the autumn or winter, blooming, then growing again. These types of dendrobiums, I believe, do have quite the special needs or special growth pattern, which we do need to take into account. So we're going to talk all about that, see what type of setup I'll choose for such a large and heavy orchid. And yeah, just have a great day. I hope you're gonna enjoy today's video. And if you do, please give this video a like, a share would be wonderful. All of these things help out. And why not subscribe? I post 3 times a week. So that said, let me show you what I started with. So first of all, I want to make sure that the root system, which is super extensive on this orchid, is easy to remove from the pot or container. Let me just show you. You see, there's no more medium inside, but the roots are swirling around the container. So I first want to soak them really well in water, get them very flexible and easy to detach, just so I manage to save as many of them as possible. So as I'm letting the orchid soak, let me tell you a little bit about the problem with deciduous dendrobiums or dormancy type dendrobiums. Now, most orchids we grow have continuous growth. Phalaenopsis, Cattleyas, Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types, not the nobiles, Oncidiums, and many other orchids grow continuously throughout the year. They don't have a period in which they shed their leaves, then they're not active, they don't really absorb much water, then they bloom and then they start growth again. None of that with these orchids. This, however, happens to the deciduous dendrobiums and a few other orchids like the catasetums and other species that do have a very predetermined or set type of growth. With deciduous dendrobiums, which this one is, I don't know if I told you, it's the aphyllum, aka cucullatum, aka pierardi. It has many different names for whatever reason. I'm just going to stick to the aphyllum. So this guy has a very strict pattern of growth. In the spring, we produce new growth and start to produce new roots. In the summer, we continue to grow those new growths and produce a nice root system. In the autumn, we halt growth. Nothing grows anymore. Instead, let's shed the leaves. During autumn and actually winter, we shed all of the leaves. There's no more new growth, barely any root, if at all. And then we do nothing for a little while. Then we bloom and then we start growth again and the cycle repeats. That is a very normal pattern of growth for this dendrobium and also the perishi, the anosmum, and a few other species. Now for this reason, because we have these roots growing at particular times of the year rather than continuously like a phalaenopsis, which can actually grow whatever she wants whenever she wants, to be honest, and as many of you know, sometimes you can have a flower spike growing and a leaf growing and some roots growing. Yeah, these guys, they don't do that. So because roots tend to grow at particular times of the year, repotting is actually more suitable or beneficial or less shocking at particular times of the year as well. If we repot this orchid in the middle of summer, and let's say it's not a very easy repotting and we mess up the majority of the root system in the middle of summer, there is a very low chance of brand new roots just starting to grow from the middle of summer a few more months until autumn. The majority of the root system for the year is completely destroyed. So the best time to repot this orchid typically is in the spring, when new growth starts to appear at the base of the canes. This new growth will produce roots very fast. It doesn't need to mature or bloom or anything of the sorts. When it starts to grow, a few weeks after, roots start to grow as well. So timing wise and safety wise, it is preferable to do a repot in the springtime when these new growths start to appear rather than at other times of the year. Of course, if you have an emergency, you should repot an orchid whenever. If the medium is horrible, it's damaging it, yeah, repot it whenever, and we're gonna have to deal with the consequences. But if your orchid is healthy, I would highly and strongly suggest that you wait for springtime. If you guys know, I did order this orchid last year, a few months ago, and I didn't do anything to it. It was a hassle to find place for it in the greenhouse. Luckily, it didn't drink a lot of water because it was a bit dormant, pretty dormant actually. But now it is starting to grow, it is starting to shrivel. I need to repot it because in the growing season, this orchid is thirsty. So I hope this answers a question that I do get quite frequently. Messing up the root system in the middle of summer, it's not going to go great. You're probably going to have to deal with a setback orchid. Right, so with that said, I think this orchid soaked enough. It is time to unmount it at the end of the day. It grew on the pot rather than inside the pot. All right, so what I'll start with is just trying to remove these roots from the pot. Some of these roots will be damaged. It's impossible to just remove them without damage because they're already swirling the pot. But I'm hoping that the newer roots will not get so damaged. So that's what I'm doing, just removing the roots or detaching them. It's really easy to detach because this is plastic, pretty smooth. It's not like it's wood. But yeah, I still want to be a little careful. Ooh, well, that flew. All right, so here we have it. Isn't that pretty? Well, we do have to determine which roots are alive and which are not anymore, and that can take a little while. Where do I put this? If I let go of the orchid, it's gonna fall. So what I wanna do next is cut away any dead root. As you can see, there's no way of going around it. I have to really look at most of the roots individually and determine which root is alive, which is not. I have very old roots just mingling with the newer roots. Yeah, it's gonna be quite the process, but it's okay. Alright, so I did the best job that I could. I cut away all of this dead part and I left the newer roots on. Anytime we're dealing with a very big orchid such as this, it is impossible to remove all the dead and unhealthy roots, but it's important to remove as many as we can. That would be okay, because if we leave them on, all they're gonna do is start breaking down in the new medium, spoiling it faster, favorizing pathogens. It's not gonna be pretty. So it's always better to run the risk of removing some of the good roots, but most of the dead roots, than the other way around. Trust me, I know. I found out the hard way. I remember the video. I'll link you to it down below. My first repot of the maxillaria, not very good. I'll link it to it down below. In that instance, I kept both the dead roots and also the older medium. Not a good choice. Luckily, it was a long time ago when I wasn't so experienced with orchids. Right, so I'm gonna clean up my working surface and I'm gonna come back with the new pot and medium. Alright, so because my orchid is super top heavy and the root system, even though it's there, it's just not anchored in the pot, I will need to stabilize it in the pot. Don't worry, it's really easy to do that. All you need to do is have some raffia tape, some maybe even floral wire. I'm gonna use jute twine, which is fine. I think it's gonna break down in time, again, which is fine. I'm gonna be using a Repot Me slotted pot. This is the inches, 6 inches or 8 inches. I'm gonna look at, I'm gonna tell you. I love these pots for these types of orchids because they're not very, very tall, they're rather wide. And this is what I need. I don't need a tall pot for this orchid, which is already long. What I need is a rather shallow and wider pot. If you look at the pot this orchid came in, pretty much the same idea. It's not a tall pot, but it's a wide pot. It's just a little bit more functional. So first off, I need some of this jute twine. Let's say this should be enough. Then I'm gonna run it through the drainage slits, in this case, of the pot, making a loop at the bottom. And here at the top, I'm gonna make sure that these wires go right through the middle of the orchid. And I'll just show you what I mean. But first, I need to place the medium, and I'm gonna go for the typical mixture that I use of bark and sphagnum moss. I'm not gonna shy away from the moss because this orchid is very thirsty in its growing season. I'm also still going to start with sphagnum moss because I will keep this orchid in the pot, hanging but not mounted, not upside down. So I want the system that I currently have to still work. So as I was saying, I'm gonna make sure that the jute twine will stick right between these pseudobulbs. And what I will do pretty much is tie in the rhizome. I wish I had 3 or 4 hands at this point, but I'm gonna try to do with 2. I'm gonna try to find the most comfortable path for the orchid as well. I don't wanna put a lot of pressure on the actual pseudobulb, but the rhizome, which is the sturdy part. Now I'm going to tie the jute twine and pretty much tie the orchid to the pot. So no matter how much pressure or weight it gains, it's not going to fall out of the pot, which can definitely happen. All right, so the orchid is now secure to the pot. As you can see, I can continue adding my medium around the roots. So what I'll do is just continue to place medium around the roots until I reach the very top, and I'll finish with a top layer of bark. Now with these types of dendrobiums, it is a very good idea to use some extra fertilization in the shape of some slow release fertilizer because they grow fast. If you can imagine, these guys need to put on this length of a pseudobulb within the growing season, which is less than a year. It's 6 to 9 months. So they need to grow very fast, they will consume a lot of water and a lot of nutrients to put on this growth. So make sure you provide it if you want to have very luscious growth and a beautiful bloom show. I'm not gonna shy away from the fertilizer, I'll tell you that. All right, so at this point I can cut away the jute twine. Careful not to cut away the growths. And I'm pretty much done. Now, I did notice that I seem to have some pseudobulbs which are not alive anymore. They yellowed off, such as this one. I'm going to cut away this portion. This is not alive, it's already dried. The orchid doesn't need it anymore. Would I cut away the pseudobulbs? No, not really. What I would do is wait for 2, 3, 4 years and then cut them away, because all of these pseudobulbs have stored energy for the new growth. And yes, in time, as you can see, they will shrivel and not look so good and really not help the orchid way too much. This is a very old pseudobulb. I can actually cut this away. Look at that. It's almost dry. So something like this, yes, you can cut away, but this one is 3 to 4 years old. Something like this, which is last year's growth, definitely don't cut it away. And when you do cut older pseudobulbs, don't try to cut the rhizome. Cut right above the rhizome. Leave half an inch, 1 centimeter base. Practically leave a stump. That's okay. What you don't want to do is cut away the eyes, because these eyes can actually produce some growth at some point. One more thing this orchid has is a bunch of keikis. Now, what you can do is propagate these keikis. If you want to share your plant with a friend, or you just want to have 2 of the same plant, you can definitely remove these keikis like so and pot them separately, or you can bush out the existing plant you have by potting the keikis with the mother plant. Now, I already potted mine, but that's okay. What I will do is sneakily insert this keiki right here. It's not gonna fall out, and the roots will find their way down into the medium, and the end result will be more growths on my orchid. I'm gonna bush it out, which was this particular plant I wanted to do. So really, the choice is yours. There's no wrong or right. You can even leave them on the orchid, but they will grow just as long as the orchid, so it might become very tall at some point. If that's a nuisance, just remove the keikis, pot them separately, or pot them with the mother plant. Whatever you want to do with them, it's perfectly fine. All right, so this is a few days later. Please excuse the noise outside. I don't know what's going on. It's always very noisy here. That's why I always film very early in the morning. So What I decided to do with this orchid is change the decorative pot to a light plastic one, and I have it currently hanging by this curtain rod. So I wanted to make the pot as light as possible. Not sure if this will be the final location of this orchid. We're gonna see about that. I'm always meddling with how things are arranged, but I want to keep this orchid in a pretty bright location. It doesn't really need direct sunshine and things of the sort, but it does actually prefer pretty bright light. This location, which faces south and west, should be ideal for it. And I can already see that 1 week after I repotted it, the growths have already grown quite a lot, the new canes at the base, which is great. So that is about it for today's video. This is how I would go about any type of Dendrobium orchid of the sorts. And I hope this answers the question of when to actually repot these types of Dendrobiums after the dormancy period. I would go in the springtime. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video and that you have a great day. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!